Now I'm very happy to welcome back a college hoop specialist as well as the editor and host of the Vegas Sports and Information Network, and Mr. Matt Youmans from vsin.com. You can follow Matt on X at MattyYoumans247. Matt, now that football is over, did you have some time to catch your breath at all?
Is that a serious question? No. Kiev, hey, Kiev, great to be back on the show. No, a lot of times after the Super Bowl, we have a lot of hosts of VSiN who like to take vacation. This is no time of the year to be taking vacation if you're in a college hoops. So I don't do that after the Super Bowl. You got to stay in the middle of it and stay in the groove on college basketball handicapping and betting all the way through, the month of February into March. And I don't take a break and really maybe take any time off until after the Masters, in the middle of April, because you go straight from the Final Four to the Masters, one of the biggest events of the year, and then start to think about taking a little bit of time off at that point. But now I love college hoops and everything about it so much that not taking any sort of break after the Super Bowls, right back to college basketball the next day.
I'm more excited to just get past it and now have a focus on college basketball myself, so I know exactly what you're saying. People always love to ask you about food. I'm not going to do that, though, because you get bugged way too much on VSiN about that. So we'll save that for August when you come up with your rankings. But let's get right into little sports. It's funny. Have you thought about the NFL draft? Do you have any takes on it real quick? I have one take myself, but I'd like to hear what you have.
Yeah, of course. Always thinking about the NFL draft a little bit. Last year, I probably had, I'm just going to say I had one of the best NFL betting drafts I've ever had. Not that we've had a bunch of them because we haven't been able to bet on the draft that much until the last 6-7 years or so. But last year's draft turned out incredibly well for me. I'll tell you one guy, and I mentioned this 2 months ago, and I'm afraid there's not going to be much betting value left on it by the time we get to the draft because he's starting to pick up some mainstream media hype as Jackson Dart, the quarterback for Ole Miss, who started his career at USC and was a prep standout in Utah. I followed Jackson Dart's career, and I felt like that he's a sleeper quarterback in this draft. There's so much hype about Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, and I think Jackson Dart's a sleeper. He might be better than both of those guys at the NFL level, but we'll see. There's not much out there in terms of betting the draft right now, but that's one guy I'd say keep your eye on because he could be the third quarterback in the first round. He might turn out to be the best quarterback of the draft. At this time last year, I kept talking about Jaden Daniels and how I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft, not Caleb Williams. And I think that this draft, it might be Jackson Dart who's the best quarterback.
That he might be, and that's actually kind of part of my take. I think that Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and I'll even throw Will Howard in there. I know he had a bunch of 5 stars with him, but I think there's just not a lot of separation between them. I'm shocked to see Will Howard like way down there at 120 to 1. I think you have Quinn Ewers at 100 to 1. It's like Will Howard. I would take Will Howard over Quinn Ewers. I just don't like what Quinn Ewers has done in the clutch and in the red zone too much. At Texas. And I think that this is just not the best quarterback draft class, but at the same time, doesn't it feel like Tennessee needs a star name in a way? Smaller market. It almost like Shedeur Sanders would just boost that town and the feeling up and maybe sell some jerseys, and get the media talking about it a lot. I know there's a lot that comes with a star. Coming from Dion and everything, and there's a lot of distraction there. But I almost still feel that, I wouldn't shock me if they did pick Shedeur Sanders for some of those reasons.
It could be. I guess it comes down to your evaluation of Shedeur Sanders and if you think he's the real deal. And if you do, and you're the Titans, I think he would make sense for a lot of reasons. I've read that Tom Pelissero of NFL Network said on the Rich Eisen show that several draft evaluators, GMs, and scouts in the NFL don't even have a first-round grade on Shedeur Sanders. Now, I don't know how legit that is, but it's interesting to think about. His arm strength is not elite. I think it's pretty good. His mobility is pretty good, but it's not elite. There's a lot to look at there. I'm not really sure. I think Travis Hunter is probably the best player in the draft, about the two-way star from Colorado, but the Titans are one of those franchises. They need something, right? But you can never draft a quarterback just based on big name value and what you think you're going to do. Because if the quarterback turns out to be a bust, like let's say Sam Darnold was with the Jets, that doesn't do anything for your franchise except set you back. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a bust. I think if the Titans did take him there, wouldn't be the worst decision. I'm not sure. I'm not complete with my evaluation on him yet, but I know the Titans need a quarterback and they need something because that franchise is about bottom of the barrel. And a year ago, there were so many people bragging about the coaching hire and how this guy's going to be one of the bright young coaches in the NFL, and I thought he was one of the worst in the league last year. So Titans have a long way to go. Their front office has been a mess. Quarterback situation's been a mess. So if you draft Shedeur, probably wouldn't be the worst move. And you probably need a quarterback more than you do a player like Travis Hunter when you're the Titans too. So I think that could make some sense. I actually like Shedeur a little bit more than I do Cam Ward. It's a close call, but Cam Ward makes a lot of questionable decisions with the ball, a little bit too turnover prone for me. And if you're that way in the NFL, you're not going to survive. Just like the previous mentioned Sam Darnold, right? When he was coming out of USC, I said, this guy's a turnover machine. I don't think he's going to make it in the NFL. I watched all those games at USC. Way too many turnover-worthy plays or risky throws, way too many interceptions. I never was a Sam Darnold fan. He turned it around this year until the last two games, and then he became the old Sam Darnold in the last two games. But
cost himself millions.
Yeah. I'll probably I have not really dug too deep in the NFL draft because really there's not much we can bet on the draft right now. So probably talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with that. You don't want another bust, but that city needs something. And I agree with that coaching hire. He was one of my on my poor list. Absolutely. And he still is. Anybody from the Bengals tree over there, I don't even like the Bengals Taylor either. I don't at all. I think they would do way better without him. Let's talk about buy low, sell high, little college hoops here. Do you think? I think about this every week, because I want a team that the market's overrating a little bit or underrating. Let's start with a buy low team. Do you have one in top of mind? I have one myself.
Why don't you go ahead and tell me yours first, and I'll get to mine.
Mine, it's weird because Kansas State keeps being dogs and they keep winning. Here's the thing. They're still 57th on KenPom. So the spreads are going to kind of come out soft with these KenPom numbers-ish, and then the market's going to adjust. And maybe there's money that's going to come in on Kansas State. But still being 57th on KenPom, like they're going to be a 7-point dog at BYU at opener. Maybe that closes at 5. But, man, they're playing with a lot of confidence. And I just disagree with their KenPom ranking. I think they should be 40th or 43rd. So that was one of them. And believe it or not, same conference, Oklahoma State, they're showing some fight. And since February 1st, they're 2-2. They only lost to TCU away by 1. They gave Houston some problems, only losing by 9 away. They beat Arizona State at home. I feel like maybe Lutz has got the kids finally believing in themselves a little bit. I'm going to look at them against Texas Tech a little bit as a 10-point dog at home 10-point dog this weekend against a Texas Tech team that's just not been playing some good defense lately.
You're right, but Grant McCaslin's a heck of a coach at Texas Tech. He's done a great job there. And I agree with both the teams you brought up there. K-State, I've played, I think, 3 times in the last 2 weeks. And this K-State team's really turned it around. This is what I thought K-State was going to be in the preseason, and it didn't happen. And we're sitting around going, what the hell is going on with Jerome Tang's team? And now all of a sudden K-State's playing the type of basketball I expected to see in November, which is great because you want to start peaking in late January and February, and that's what K-State's doing. As far as Okie State, I agree with you there too because there have been some spots where Okie State's been a really short home favorite or a home dog, and I've scratched my head. What's up with that line? Because that's not the line I made on the game, and Okie State keeps covering. What a wild game at TCU, by the way. That one kind of slipped under the radar. But, yeah, I like the 2 you threw out there. And, by the way, I disagree with a lot of the KenPom rankings too, and a lot of the Ken Palm ratings. But then again, Ken Palm's got a pretty proven formula that, you got to disagree with a few teams here and there, but that's where you can find value too, because so many of the betting lines on a nightly basis are set off the Ken Palm projections. And I don't like to look at the Ken Palm site too often because it influences the way you think about some teams. So I really don't look at it more than once a week or so. But I'll give you a couple teams, and these aren't quite under the radar like the two you mentioned, but I like Missouri. Nobody, when you talk about the strength of the SEC, nobody really talks about Missouri. Now, this team's got some really good wins on its resume. And I think because Missouri was so bad last year in the SEC, a lot of people were slow to buy in to the Tigers, including me. I was a little bit slow. And then you saw how what Missouri did against Florida, and you're saying, okay, this team's legit. So I think Missouri is a team that's overlooked a lot in the SEC that could be in that category. Maybe Clemson out of the ACC too, because Brad Brownell could never get over the hump in the tournament, but he's got that veteran team now that's been to the tournament and won. Just knocked off Duke and North Carolina back-to-back at home. And Clemson could be a bit of a sleeper. I don't want to say Maryland yet because we'll see what Maryland does this week. But the Terps seem like they've kind of been a team on the rise in the Big Ten. But those are some of the I was asked on a podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago about, hey, for people, I think it was a week before the Super Bowl, kind of a dead week. For people who are just jumping into college hoops, what's a team you can bet on the futures board that has some value? And at the time, BetMGM still had 60-1 on St. John's. And I said, St. John's, that's a top 10 defensive team. Obviously, the Johnnies don't shoot the three well, and that's their weakness, but you've got experienced guards. You've got size in the low post. You've got a Hall of Fame coach. You got elite defense. I thought St. John's was best value on the futures board. I've got 80-1 on St. John's. There was 60-1 at BetMGM. But see, the value in that team's gone now because the secret's out when St. John's became a top 10 team. So these things can change quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. They certainly can change quickly. It's always like thinking the worst thing is like when you're like, oh, I kind of like this team coming up. I'm not going to bet them, and all of a sudden they win, and the value's gone. That's the thing that we always, as bettors are like, man, I kicking myself for missing out on this one, and that's why I love to do this exercise. How about sell high? And I'll give you one real quick. I mean, to be honest with you, Houston, I don't think Houston, is in the top 2 or 3 teams. I think they're probably top 5 or 6 maybe, but I mean, that defense takes them very far, but when they go on the road, they falter, and their free throw shooting isn't elite enough to be winning some of those close games when it comes to Foul City. So Houston is one of them for sure, and Kentucky with their injuries now is one I'm going to be looking to fade possibly when they get to Texas. So those are 2 that I have. What about you?
I'll tell you, I said the same thing about Houston this time last year because Houston didn't have a big man. And I said if they run into a team like UConn or Purdue, they're going to get knocked out because they don't have much size in the low post. And this Houston team's pretty much the same. You got 6'7", 6'8" athletes. And now, look, they're going to win a lot of games because they're great at defensive rebounding, but there's some certain teams they're going to match up with in the tournament that they're going to stop them. And like Houston's limited offensively too, like you mentioned. So I'm once again not buying into Houston, just like you said. I'm hesitant to buy into Texas A&M. I think the Aggies have been lucky, hit some Wade Taylor's hit a couple big threes late to help them pull out a couple games they probably should have lost. Texas A&M's a team I'd probably sell. Maybe even Iowa State. I know a lot of people were really high on Iowa State a few weeks ago. Then they got beat on that. I know you watched it that night when Caleb Love hit the 60-foot shot and the buzzer to force overtime, and that sent the Cyclones into a tailspin. They get blown out at home by K-State. Had a really bad week. Got blown out of Kansas. But I've always been a bit skeptical of this Iowa State team too. So I would probably sell on that team. I'm definitely selling on Kansas. I have them for a while.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not one of Bill Self's best coaching jobs. Took a player like A.J. Storr, who was a sensational scorer at Wisconsin. It looked like he was headed for the NBA. And for some reason, Bill Self just doesn't want to play A.J. Storr. I guess he doesn't like the way he defends or doesn't rebound, but I thought he was going to be a huge piece of that Kansas team, and he's kind of a forgotten man. So maybe Houston, Texas A&M, Iowa State, Kansas, some of the teams that I would like to sell high on. We're not really selling high on Kansas anymore because Kansas has plummeted to 17th, I think, in the AP poll, and everybody is kind of seeing the Jayhawks flaws. But I guess my buy-on teams, one would be maybe Missouri and Clemson, teams nobody's really talking about.
No, I agree with that. Kansas, after they lost against Houston, I was on Kansas that day, and up 6, shooting 2 free throws with 15 seconds left. That's almost impossible to freaking do. And Bill Self figured out how to do that. And then that takes me back to last year. That same shit happened with this team, and I can't remember what it was, but it was one of those same scenarios. Let's talk some games then. Friday. We have a big game here. We have UCLA versus Indiana. I'm going to project the line would be Indiana +2. And I use KenPom and a little bit of other, just because I think the market, won't give them the +3 and a total of 139. What do you think about this game on Friday? Is this a betting spot for you?
So hold on here. I had the UCLA team page called up here, and for some reason I flipped to the Maryland Terrapins. That's not what I was trying to do. So UCLA had a 7-game win streak going into Champaign a couple nights ago and had that stopped. But I bet the Bruins in that game. They were 7-point dogs. They were down 15 or 16 late, and it didn't look good. They whittled the deficit all the way to 2 and ended up losing by 5, so they covered. But UCLA has been another team. Mick Cronin's turned into a top 10 defensive team. And since he challenged his players' toughness, Bruins really responded. Much better bet on the West Coast than the Bruins are when they travel to the Midwest or the East Coast, and you've seen that in the way they play. Interesting scenario here that sets up for this game at Assembly Hall on Friday night, because I think a lot of people viewed Indiana as kind of a dead team after Mike Woodson's resignation announcement. Indiana was in a good spot last Saturday at home, fell behind big. I think it was 43-27 at halftime. In that game against Michigan, battled back, ended up losing by 3 after the half-court shot that covered for a lot of people who bet the dog in that game. But Hoosiers are left for dead, right? They thought that maybe this team's going to quit on Mike Woodson, who's not much of a coach anyway. And then they go up to East Lansing on Tom Izzo night and spoil Izzo's big party. And all of a sudden you're saying, okay, maybe this Indiana team deserves a little bit more respect. Hoosiers have not quit on Mike Woodson. These guys are going to continue to play hard. So that's an interesting handicap for me. But you've got a coaching mismatch. By the way, Indiana played a lot of zone, which I love to see. When you're struggling, when teams are struggling, more coaches need to go to zone defense because so many offensive teams have no clue how to operate against a zone defense. And that's what turned that game around for Indiana at Michigan State. So that was a rare, sharp coaching move by Woodson and his staff. Mick Cronin, obviously the superior coach. Cronin's got a coaching edge here against the Indiana staff. Cronin's off a loss, where his team did show a lot of fight at the end of the game. I projected UCLA. I didn't look at the KenPom. I don't like to look at KenPom. I like to make my own numbers before I look at that. But I thought UCLA would be maybe a 1.5 point favorite in Bloomington on Friday night. And I'm not really sure. I'm kind of leaning UCLA off the loss and Indiana off the big win. I like that scenario where you get the better coach and he's off a loss. And then you got a team that's off kind of a fluke win, upset win on the road in Indiana. Lean a little bit to UCLA, but I'm not sure right now if I'm going to play it. No,
that's fair. And UCLA metrically is definitely the superior team. Not been great on the road, only shooting 50.4 effective field goal compared to 55 at home. Indiana got right, it seems like, after the big road Michigan State win. And I tweeted out who saw that coming. I would want a 2.5 if I was going to take Indiana. But here's the thing. It used to be a 3. I used to say that, but more teams are figuring out to foul up 3.
No doubt.
And that is completely ruining that 3. And it makes the 2 just that much more important these days. It's been a shift over the last year and a half, 2 years over in college basketball where you see more and more of that happen. And so now I like the 2.5. I'm hoping to get it. I think maybe I'll get it. Maybe I'll try Indiana again. But what I will say is the under might be a play, because if both defenses show up, especially UCLA, and Indiana's just not having a shooting night, you could be in for a slugfest here of just defense. So that's what I would probably look at this game. But it's all number dependent, so we'll see what happens on that one. Let's get to Saturday. Massive slate on Saturday, Matt. This is going to be a great Saturday. I hope everybody gets to sit on their couch and watch these games because they're fantastic. Houston versus Arizona. This is another one I'm projecting that Houston's going to be a small road favorite, probably 1 or 2 points again. I'm going to call it +2. We'll say 138. Arizona's been hot. Obviously, Houston's in the top 3. What are your thoughts?
I'm probably going to play Arizona in this spot. And, a lot of times I like to play the better defensive team. Defense travels. I just think that's such a strong home court, McHale Center in Tucson. And, Arizona did pick up that win against Iowa State. Obviously needed Caleb Love's miracle shot to do that and force overtime. But Arizona's been hot. And actually go back to – I'm going to go back. Arizona – even previous to that win against Iowa State, had won 2 in a row. So Arizona had won 6 in a row going to Kansas State on Tuesday night. I did bet Kansas State as a 3.5-point dog in that game. K-State won the game 73-70. I'll probably come back with Arizona here. I hope you're right that the Wildcats are home dogs. I think I was projecting more of like a pick'em or maybe even Arizona -1. I'd love to get a couple points with Arizona if that's what the Kim Palm site is showing. Is Wildcats are so much better offensively than Houston, and we just saw Houston a week ago. I don't know if you watched any of the game. Cougars were kind of sluggish and just sleepwalking through a game against Colorado on the road. Yeah, Colorado's winless in the Big 12, and I was not impressed by the way Houston played that road game, and. I would love to get Arizona as a home dog here. That would definitely be a play for me if that's the scenario we're going to be looking at on Saturday. But yeah, that's a great matchup, and it's a tricky handicap. But I think if you give me Arizona +2, I'm taking it. I'm a little skeptical that we're going to see Arizona +2. I think. If that opens Houston as a 2-point favorite, you might see it get bet to pick or even Arizona as a favorite at post time.
Yeah, I'd be quick to the draw. Houston -2 on Ken Palm, so that's what Ken Palm thinks. Look at Torvik or anybody. I can continue that, but you're absolutely nailed it. I'll be on Arizona. I'll be on Arizona all the way up to -2 in my opinion. Houston, really bad road team. UCF, may remember they beat UCF by 1 point on the road. I was on UCF that day too. And then, the 2 overtimes against Kansas, what happened? That was more of a Kansas fail. That should have been a win for Kansas, Yep. But the fact that it scored for Houston probably gives us a little bit more value in the future fading them on the road. I believe that Houston ranks like 360th on Haslametrics in home road splits. That's how bad they perform on the road compared to their overall performance at home, and they don't hit the free throws well. I'm with you. I'm going to be on Arizona. I'm going to beg for a +2, but I do agree that it will get bet down most likely to pick them by at least by tip off. It'll be definitely down to pick them. How about UConn Seton Hall?
Hey, real quickly, I want to mention one more thing about this game. So if you bet Arizona, and it sounds like you and I are both looking to do that, Caleb Love needs to show up, and that's pretty obvious, but against K-State the other night, Caleb Love was 3 for 15 and 0 for 7 from 3. And Arizona as a team was 2 for 22 from 3-point range. And I just wanted to mention that because I don't know if there's a game. I'm sure there hasn't been. There has not been a game I've watched all season, maybe in the last 10 years, where both teams shot the 3 as poorly as Arizona and K-State did on Tuesday night. The teams combined to go 3 for 41 from 3-point range. Arizona was 2 for 22. K-State was 1 for 19, and you're never going to see worse 3-point shooting than that. And Caleb Love was 0 for 7. So if we bet Arizona, he better show up.
Absolutely. It's like the rebounding really comes into mind there. And that's why Arizona was 62% from 2. Kansas State was 60%. Arizona was 58% from 2. So they're shooting very well, cleaning the board. It's kind of like that Texas A&M style. I know you mentioned them. Chuck up the 3 and get the board and throw it in. Some teams are doing that. Let's move on to Seton Hall, UConn. I believe it was UConn, Seton Hall.
Yeah.
I'm going to project plus 12 for Seton Hall. I don't know if I'm going to be off or on in that. A total of 140-34. I'm really intrigued by what you have to say about this one because I know you threw it out there to me.
I did, and I threw it out there because I think UConn might start to get hot now with Liam McNeely back and the way he played against Creighton. I was on UConn the other night too. I had a good night in college hoops that night, but there were certain games like UConn where I thought, man, I guess I was wrong about this one because Creighton was up 37-23 in the first half, and I had UConn plus 3.5, and didn't look good. And then all of a sudden, the Huskies come storming back in the second half, and Creighton can't hit a shot, and that's how quickly things can turn around. And Liam McNeely in that game was outstanding. All right, so let's talk about Seton Hall first, though, just for a minute, because the Pirates have won one game since early December. Let's see. Seton Hall, after a win over NJIT, was 5-4. Seton Hall is now 6-18. Won them 14 in the last 15 games, and the one win was against DePaul in overtime, and that was a home game for Seton Hall. The recent games have been blowouts. Lost by 14 to Georgetown. Lost by 30 to Butler. That was a home game for Seton Hall. Lost by 17 at DePaul. Lost to Creighton by 25. I'm wondering, and also lost to St. John's, by the way, by 28. I'm wondering if this Pirates team just kind of quit, and if the value here might be on the big favorite. And I hate to play big road favorites in college basketball, so I'm probably not going to lay it with UConn. But Seton Hall has been a pretty good fade recently. If you've been looking for bad teams to bet against, where they got no hope, nothing to play for really in March, might have quit on the coach. And now you got UConn all of a sudden with the arrow pointing up. I think this team's got to have a lot more confidence after Liam McNeely's 38.10 rebound game at Creighton on Tuesday night. So I don't want anything to do with Seton Hall. But typically, like I said, I don't like to play road favorites, especially big road favorites.
McNeely needed that game after that bad game against St. John's in his comeback game. So
who else has not been playing well for UConn is Alex Caravan. So McNeely finished that St. John's game with 18 points, but how about Caravan? He was 1 for 6 with 3 points in that game. He's got to play much better, and I don't think that's been talked about much. But Liam McNeely comes back, and like you said, I have not been impressed with McNeely in a lot of games this season, but man, he was good against Creighton. He was great against Creighton.
Yeah, and I look for teams that have quit. I was on Miami for a while, but I kind of noticed them starting to try a few weeks back, and then I was like, it was the Cal game, and I was like, okay, they want to win a few. We'll fade them later. I think Seton Hall might have quit too, and it's a big game for them at home. But I mean, they're once they're down by 10 points, they can just let it all go. And that, I could never bet Seton Hall. I would consider laying with UConn. It's like you're reading my notes on this one. I picked Wisconsin versus Purdue. I project Purdue to be minus 5.5. With a total of about 149. I'm going to say that this is a big spot for Purdue after that tough loss that they just had. I was on Michigan, and I thought I was going to lose that one. I laid 1. I gave out 2, though, to other people, so I had to count as a push. But I got it early at 1. But the Big Ten home refs, man, they have been just amazing again. Most of the time, there's a couple crews that will give it an honest game or more or even sometimes favor the away team, I feel, but mostly Big Ten refs, man, at home it's hard to bet against them. And Purdue coming off that loss is definitely a spot that I do not want to bet with back Wisconsin. Purdue, an amazingly coached and efficient team, but I do kind of like the over, to be honest with you. I think Wisconsin is efficient enough to kind of keep up for a while with Purdue. Purdue's going to be hitting the threes. Sometimes when you get those two efficient teams, even though they don't play the fastest, they go over, and that's why Purdue is 15-10 to the over, and Wisconsin is 14-10 to the over. So if it's around 148, 149, man, I'll be on the over on this one.
I don't disagree. I think that's probably the way I look at it. What you said about the Purdue-Michigan game is so true. And Purdue controlled that game for 35 minutes. I was on Michigan. I actually bet the money line at minus 122, and I thought it was going to come down to the wire, and that's why I didn't want to be laying any points. So I just wanted to bet Michigan to win the game. And, like you say, at home in the Big Ten, you're going to get the whistle, and that's why I like betting some of these stronger home teams like Michigan, like Purdue in the spot against Wisconsin. The free throw disparity in that game was 26-8. Wolverines had 26 free throw attempts. Purdue had 8. And I think one of the problems the Boilermakers have, they got two problems right now. One is they don't shoot the three well on the road. Braden Smith did hit some big threes in that game against Michigan. He might be the best point guard in the country. He's keeping this Purdue team going. Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn in the low post. Purdue's also got a problem. Only 3 guys have been scoring. And it's Smith, Kaufman-Renn, and Fletcher Lawyer. Purdue had 0 bench points in the game against Michigan. The guys like Camden Heide and Miles Colvin are just not stepping up like a lot of people thought they would this season. So Braden Smith's been playing 40 minutes, too. He played 40 minutes against Michigan. You wonder if he's going to wear down at some point. The guy's, he looks like he's tireless. Steph Curry, in a way, with his conditioning. He just runs the court amazingly for 40 minutes.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think it's a big spot. Purdue, wants to three-peat in the Big Ten, and that was a tough loss in Ann Arbor. You got to win this home game against Wisconsin. So I think the Badgers are going to hang around in this game. I thought, let's see, you were saying 5.5. I thought the number was going to be right in that range. I was thinking 6.5. It's such a important spot for Purdue to bounce back and get this win. But maybe over is the better bet because Purdue does shoot the three much better at home.
Yeah, I think they do too. And I'm just scared about I would lay it with Purdue more than taking Wisconsin, that's for sure. Obviously, if this is below 5, I would lay it with Purdue. So, I mean, we'll see where this line comes out. How about Auburn-Bama? Maybe the best game of the weekend, man. And Alabama's going to be laying 1. I have a total of 172 in this game. I think that's where it's going to be around when it opens, at least. You picked this game, so I'm curious on if you have a side.
Yeah, both teams have 1 loss in the SEC, and they were both on the road on Tuesday night, right? Auburn pulled out that game of Vandy, and Alabama rolled at Texas, and the Tide shot the 3 and just shot the ball in general about as well as I've seen them shoot it this season. I was going to throw this one at you and see what number you project here. So we got number 1 versus number 2, Alabama-Auburn. It's not college football. It's college hoops. And
it's the Iron Bowl of hoops.
That's right. This is a monster matchup. I'm going to make Alabama a 1.5-point home favorite. I have not, like you said, I have not looked at Kim Palm. I think you can't give Auburn too much here. I think 1.5. And then let's say Alabama wins this game. When they flip back to Auburn, they'll probably make Auburn like a 4-point home favorite. But I'm going to say Alabama 1.5. I lean a little bit to the Tide. How about you?
I think Alabama is going to be a 1-point favorite, even though Ken Palm has Auburn a 2-point favorite. So I disagree.
Right?
Yes, they do. They have 6. Alabama's number 6, Auburn's number 1. I disagree, just like you, with the Ken Palm numbers on this. I think Bama's going to at least be 1.5, maybe tops. I doubt it gets past the 2. I kind of like Alabama in this. I picked Alabama to win the national championship in early January. I'm sticking with that. I think they have a lot of firepower, and I think that Cliff Omoyuri is going to shut down Broome. And, I think he's been looking forward to this game. Spent a lot of his days at Rutgers, and finally he gets to play for a team like Alabama. Alabama's got a lot of championship poise. Being that they're at home, I think that's the extra thing that's going to put them over the top of Auburn. This is going to be a wonderful game, and we definitely have to watch it. So I think I'm going to lay it with Alabama as long as it's under 2. So we'll call it Alabama minus 1.5, just to kind of split the medium on that. And,
well, you know what? If you say that Kim Palm is showing Auburn 2, now I'm thinking it's going to be pick or Alabama 1, right?
Yeah, but the market should move it, I think, right?
Yeah. The numbers don't vary much from what those Kim Palm projections show. Even sometimes, maybe you'll see a couple points difference if it's obvious the situational edge is with one team. But Yeah, I lean Alabama here. I'm with you. Actually, that was the first futures bet I made last spring when I suspected that Mark Sears was not going to enter the NBA draft because he wasn't going to be a first-round pick. And then you saw some of the transfers, and Nate Oates was picking up. I bet Alabama at 20-1. I did not like the way the Tide played in the month of November, but who cares now, right? Because they're looking pretty good right now, so I feel good about that 20-1. I feel pretty good about Alabama against Auburn too.
That's me too. All right. Well, so it's 10 after. How much do you have time for a couple more? Or
a couple more. Let's fire a couple more here in the next 5 minutes.
Michigan State, Illinois -4, total 156. That's my projection. What do you have in this one?
What's your projection? Illinois 4?
Illinois -4.
Yeah, that's about what I was thinking too. I was going 3.5 or maybe 4. Izzo off the loss. You like to bet Izzo off a loss, and that was a bad one to lose to Indiana on Tuesday night, especially the way Michigan State got out to a 20-8 lead, and it looked like it was going to be Tom Izzo night, and he's going to break the Big Ten wins record. And you lose a home game to Mike Woodson. You got to think Izzo's not a pleasant guy to be. Izzo's not going to be a pleasant guy to be around the last couple of days.
No.
And, I like to bet on coaches like Danny Hurley off a loss, Tom Izzo off a loss. I like to bet situations like that, and especially the better defensive team. Michigan State won the first matchup. But if you watch that one, that was a blatant example of home court cooking by the officials.
Yeah.
One of Illinois' best players fouled out and played 9 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many calls went Michigan State's way to help the Spartans win that game. That bothered me a little bit when I was watching that because I felt like Illinois was getting a screw job from the officials in that game in East Lansing. The schedule's really getting tougher for Michigan State now. I feel like the Big Ten is the 2-horse race, and Michigan State might be the third horse that's going to fall off the pace. Michigan has got the easiest schedule down the stretch. Michigan's got, I think, a half-game lead over Purdue. It's kind of between the Wolverines and Boilermakers, I think, to win the Big Ten. They might end up splitting it, but Michigan's got the easier schedule. Michigan State's got the toughest schedule of the 3 teams. If you give me 4 or more, I'll probably be on the Spartans in Champaign because of Izzo off the loss. Just Michigan State being the better defensive team, better rebounding team.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stay away if it's 4. And it's too bad Michigan State lost that game because I wanted Illinois in this revenge spot. But it's it just became not a good spot, from that. And Illinois has had their hiccups. Obviously, their big man, he was sick. Or Ivacek, I always say his name. He had mono for like 3 or 4 weeks, and he's finally backfiring. So
I want to mention, I agree completely with what you said there because it's more of the situational spot flips a little bit. If Izzo had won that game against Indiana, celebrating the Big Ten wins record, I would have liked Illinois in this spot. Now, all of a sudden, Izzo's off a loss where he's going to be burning his ass all week, and he's going to be pushing these guys hard. It's like feels like it's totally flipped. And by the way, Spartans have a weakness that I talked about with St. John's, and that's 3-point shooting, Kiev. The Spartans shoot 28.8% from 3, which is not going to get it done in March.
I agree with that. And, I do have Michigan 9-1 to win the Big Ten that I bet in early December. Yeah, I hope so. And it's like you said, 2-horse race. I agree with that. Boise State, San Diego State -3 is what I project, and I think that's what KenPom has, 135. What about this one?
I was hoping to get a little bit more with Boise State in this matchup. The first time these teams played, I was on San Diego State in that game, and I think the Aztecs were off a loss. They were going up to Boise, and I thought this was a great spot to play San Diego State, and the Aztecs won that game 76-68. That was early January. Well, Boise's won 4 in a row. San Diego State's looked really shaky recently. Come back from some big deficits, beat San Jose a couple times, lost a home game to UNLV. When you look at Tyson Degenhart, the Broncos, I think they've got a lot more offensive firepower. And I know that when you think of San Diego State, you think, again, defense, rebounding, kind of the way Michigan State plays. I like Boise here to get revenge. I like it when I feel like the better team lost the first matchup at home in conference play, and then you get the revenge spot. The better team is Boise State. Boise's better than San Diego State. Boise lost the first matchup at home. I'm looking to take the Broncos. I'm hoping to get 3.5 or better, and that's probably going to be my favorite play in the Mountain West on Saturday night.
I like it. I also like the under. Road Revenge is a great spot or a great thing to look at when the better and it's just kind of like I was fading Florida Atlantic in December. It's like their name is giving them too much of a boost in the market. This is not the San Diego State team with Butler. He left and a lot of those big players. So I like the under 135 only because Boise it does not shoot that well on the road. They're a very poor home road splits. So I'll be looking at the dog in Boise and the under for sure in this game. Real quick, how about a Sunday game, like a Michigan versus Ohio State? You see Michigan going on the road to Ohio State and winning because Ohio State's probably going to be a short favorite.
Man, I like this Michigan team. I have all season. I know the Wolverines blew big leads in a couple of games. Lost one like Arkansas that they shouldn't have lost and games like that. But when you got the Twin Towers, Vladislav Golden and Danny Wolf and really good coach like Dusty May and some pretty good players around him, I don't want to bet against this Michigan team, but this is a huge game in the Big Ten race. If the Wolverines go to Columbus and win this, I think your 9-1 bet's going to be cashing. Because there's not too many spots here where I think Michigan can lose down the stretch. There's going to be one in Columbus. I want to say I lean to the Buckeyes here because this is one of those games where Ohio State really needs a big win to build its tournament case. And this is a desperation type of game. If Ohio State can get this win, I feel like Buckeyes are going to be on the right side of the bubble, being a tournament team. But they need a big win. And Michigan coming to town is going to be that opportunity. So I'm not sure if I'm going to play it right now, but I lean to Ohio State because it's a much more important game for the Buckeyes. But, man, I love this Michigan team. So it's kind of tough for me to bet against Michigan. But this is one spot where I can see the Wolverines kind of slipping up here down the stretch because they've got the easiest schedule of the three teams that can win the Big Ten.
I agree with that 100%. I'm not touching the game because I do like Michigan. And do you think they upgrade their coach from Juwan Howard to May? You think that was a little bit of an upgrade right there?
Biggest upgrade in college basketball.
The biggest upgrade in college basketball. I agree with you. Well, any long shots, I call them the beer bet banger segment, where you just take any plus money, dog. You can give me like a future on like a team that win the championship, make the Final Four. Anything out there on top of mind?
Let's see. What's your beer bet banger first? Give me a minute to think about. I'll come up with one for you.
Absolutely. I got a Saturday.
I wasn't prepared for that question. And St. John's had been my long shot team that I was using whenever anyone asked me. I can't use St. John's anymore because that's not a long shot. No.
Right. They went way down. Great value on that. Providence wins outright hosting Villanova is my beer bet banger. They're going to be at least plus 200, maybe hopefully better. Nova's going to be in that letdown spot after beating St. John's with that last second three. And now the Friars, they've had Wesley Cardette out for the last 4 or 5 games, and he shot really well in warm-ups in his last game. So I expect him to be back. And they also had a guy missing in their last game from a light car accident. Forgot his name. I don't like Villanova's coach at all. Neptune, I think he's a bust, and I think This is a perfect spot to take a plus money home dog like Providence here, where they have a lot to prove in this game. So I'll be doing that for my beer bet banger.
Interesting. Okay, that actually sounds pretty good. I'm going to give you just look ahead to a couple of conference tournaments I was thinking about. You really don't want to win the SEC tournament, do you? Because that's going to be a grind, and if you win that tournament like Auburn did last year, you could be bounced early from the NCAA tournament. It's going to be so tough to win the SEC tournament. How about looking at a long shot team to win the SEC tournament, maybe like Ole Miss? How about the ACC? Everybody's going to assume Duke's going to win that tournament, but maybe Louisville. I'll give you a longer shot, even though I think a lot of people are starting to catch on to the job Pat Kelsey's doing with this Louisville team. If you want to look at some non-favorites to win conference tournaments, maybe Ole Miss in the SEC, or Louisville in the ACC, and I give you maybe one dog. I'm looking at it here. How about Sunday? It's not a long shot beer banger, maybe, but how about Sunday? Maybe Utah State goes into Albuquerque and pulls the upset against New Mexico.
Okay. Okay. What's that line, you think?
Not
Utah
going to be
State's going to be a 4 or 5 point dog.
Yeah, I would say it's going to be like 4. I was thinking 4, 4.5, 5 in that range. Utah State's worth a look here because the Lobos just went to Logan, Utah, and upset Utah State not too long ago. So it could be a payback game.
Oh, that's great. No, it's road revenge again. And they're going to be plus 200 or better. So that's definitely a beer bet banger, man. Yeah, I like that one. Maybe take a little on spread too if you want to make an official play when you do it. But, when these lines come out on Saturday, take a look at them. Try to predict which way they're going to go. Obviously, New Mexico has, similar to last year, fast-paced team, does a lot better at home. But this could be their spot. They're primed for the upset. So
I'll tell you what, I don't know if you watched it late on Wednesday night, but Wyoming had every shot to go in there and upset New Mexico.
Yes,
as they opened a 17.5-point dog, and the Cowboys kind of blew it down the stretch, but they had the chance to pull. That would have been a beer banger if you bet Wyoming plus 17.5 on the money line. The Cowboys probably should have won that game in Albuquerque.
Oh, that's for sure. Well, I was losing on LSU when they were winning at halftime at plus 10.5. So I did enjoy that when I looked at the fact they couldn't hit one shot when it was in Foul City down a minute left. I was like, seriously? And they just crumbled it all away. So that was one of my losers last night. George Washington, think I came by for me last night though. But hey, man, who cuts down the nets at the end of the year? I always have to ask in April, and you can be anything favorite or whatever you think.
Well, I'm going to go with two teams I've got futures on that I like. First of all, I think a lot of these SEC teams are just going to beat the crap out of each other, and there might be some fatigue with some of these SEC teams at the end of the year because the schedule and conference has been so tough. How about I think you and I could live with it if Alabama wins, right? Since we got futures on Alabama. I'm going to give you one of two teams. I've got 20-1 on Alabama. I've got 12 or 14-1. I can't remember which it is on Duke. I want to say Alabama or Duke cuts the nets. Instead of giving you one answer, I'm going to give you two, and increases my chances of being right.
You can give me 10 answers if you like. He's got to have some good tickets on him. I agree. I wish I had Duke in a wonderful number like that. Holy cow, you're never going to find that, not even before the tournament starts. That's a wonderful ticket you have there, and that's great. If I was going to go for a sleeper or something, maybe you'd be like a Michigan or a Texas Tech or something like that. It wouldn't shock me, but I'd love to see my Badgers do it, but they're just not tough enough inside. Crowell is softer than a baby's ass down there when he faces the big teams, man. And that's what I'm gonna have to live with. But man, living with you on VSiN is wonderful. I love listening to you guys when you talk college hoops. Where can our listeners find your great information and articles?
Hey, go to vsin.com and vsin.com, and like I said, 24/7 we're putting out content, and great to be on the show with you again, and I'll probably talk with you in March, right before the madness starts.
Absolutely. We'll be hollering back in March. We'll talk to you soon. Make sure you check out VSiN and Matt Youmans.